What's good, YouTube? My name is Robert Johnson, and I am here to talk to you about ACL injuries today. Now, this video is really an inspirational video for debilitating injuries that will set you back for a couple months or even years in general. But specifically, I wanted to talk about ACL injury, with it being a topic that's personal to me and a topic that has definitely been controversial in the NFL the last couple of weeks. Week 2, we saw 7 ACL injuries in one day. 7 people tore the ACL in one day. That also just happened to be 7 years to the day, September 20th, 2013, 7 years to the day that I tore my ACL for the first time. So I felt compelled to make a video about this coincidence and hopefully help change your mind on injuries and maybe even improve your mindset and give you the motivation you need to get through it. Obviously, having an ACL injury is something that is life-changing. You're doing well in sports, or maybe you're just a regular person, and one day your anterior cruciate ligament does not want to move in a certain direction or cannot respond to the forces impacted on it in a way that would keep the integrity of your knee. So what happens is it tears. The way in which you tear it will impact your road to recovery. The more violent tears definitely have a longer road of recovery and often involve meniscus damage like mine did. The PCL often can be torn, or subsequent damage to the medial or lateral ligaments as well. No, I am not a professional on this subject. I am not a doctor. I am a man who has suffered 3 ACL injuries myself, 2 on my left knee, 1 on my right, but I'll talk more about that later. I want to talk about the mental aspect. When you first tear your ACL, you think, why me? Why did this happen to me? It could be a multitude of reasons, many of which may have nothing to do with something of your fault. For me, my first injury was caused on the football field. I was running. I got hit in an inopportune moment, one leg on the ground, knee extended, a helmet went across my knee, and I ended up tearing my ACL in both my lateral and medial meniscus. So that was a contact injury that caused an ACL tear. Non-contact injuries can also cause ACL tears. In my second ACL injury, I had nobody around me. I was in the backfield, I received a handoff, I make one cut and I just fall to the ground like I got sniped. It was kind of embarrassing, but at the same time, as soon as it happened, I knew exactly what was going down. I bring up both of those injuries back to back because once you have one ACL injury, your likelihood of getting a second one is now doubled, often even tripled, because the shear force that is on the structure surrounding the knee is going to increase because one leg is now weaker than the other, resulting in compensation by the surrounding muscles, tendons, and ligaments. Back to the psychological aspects. You often think, was it my training? Could it have been my movement pattern? As in the way I move on the field or on the court, whatever, or just could it have been bad mechanics on my part to cause the injury? The answer to that is yes, absolutely, it could have been. In my case, I think I had too big of a deficit in strength in my quad to hamstrings. I think my quads overpowered my hamstrings so much that it put me at greater risk for ACL injuries, at least initially, and then definitely later down the line. That's speculation, I can't prove that. It could just be poor field conditions, as seen with the Giants and Jets facility, MetLife Stadium. It took out 3 players in one game to Achilles and ACL injury. Achilles tears is another big injury that can often have debilitating effects because the road to recovery is so long. Recovering from an injury such as an ACL or an Achilles or a UCL for baseball players is often a 6 to 12 month recovery. That's a whole season if you think about it. That is an off season and preparation into spring or summer workouts. Now imagine at the end of these 6 months, you're finally able to do some of the things you were doing before the injury, and now you're like, I feel better than ever. No, you feel better than you ever did 6 months ago. You had surgery and then subsequently rehabbed and developed strength to the point where you're just now able to do these things comfortably at 6 months. You are not the same person you were before the injury at 6 months, unless you're Adrian Peterson. He might have been the same. But we are not all genetic freaks like Adrian Peterson. Humble yourself. Take the 12 months. You need the 12 months. I considered myself a great athlete, and at 6 months, yeah, I was good enough to return to play football, but I definitely wasn't myself. I had lost some quickness. It took me at least 3 months to get my step back, and as soon as I did, I tore my ACL again. Let's talk mental toughness. A lot of people consider themselves mentally adept. They can adapt to any situation. Look at the better side of things and move on from it. But when you suffer from setback after setback after setback, do you have the mental toughness when everybody is telling you to quit? They're saying that sport isn't for you, or maybe just being athletic period isn't for you. Do you have the mental toughness to keep going? That's a question you have to ask yourself. Do you want to keep going? Do you want to be able to return to a level of competition that requires 12 months of rehab and training? You have to gain full range of motion in your knee and learn to walk properly again. That can be very frustrating for an athlete, especially one that played at such a high level. If you're coming from high school sports especially, then you know it's very competitive at that level once you get there. And having to do a long recovery such as that can be very discouraging, especially when you miss in-season time that could have been potentially used to get offers from colleges and universities that you've always dreamed of going to, or even in college. That's potential games that you missed that you could be using to get more film for NFL teams or NBA teams, whatever your sport may be. I'm just a football player, so everything I do refers back to football. Speaking of football players, I want to talk about one of the most mentally tough football players that I have ever seen. His name was Thomas Davis. For those of you familiar with him, he's a linebacker. He went to the University of Georgia, and also played for the Carolina Panthers, the San Diego Chargers at the time. I believe he ended his career with the Redskins. November 10th, 2009, Thomas Davis first tore his ACL after a promising start to his career. After he was fully cleared, keep in mind the ACL recovery is 6 months. I'm assuming he had surgery within a month. He has NFL doctors, so they generally don't waste any time. Second day of minicamp, he re-tears his ACL. Imagine getting into minicamp, the second day you tear your ACL again. You're thinking, my career is over. He didn't let those thoughts get in his head. He kept going. And guess what happened? September 18th, 2011, he tore his ACL for a third time in his right knee. A year and 3 months after the second tear in his right knee, he tore it a third time. Each time, he took different methods of surgery. Just for some insight, most ACL repairs are either done with your patellar tendon or takes the hamstring and uses a graft for that to connect your femur to your tibia, which is what your ACL does. Or they do what's called allograft, which is using a cadaver's ACL, inserting that in. Recently, there's been some studies of regenerative ACL surgery methods. They have promising results, but I'm not going to go into them. Those are just a couple of the methods. I'm not a doctor. I don't want to go in detail and mislead you. But keep in mind, Thomas Davis was the first professional football player to come back from 3 ACL surgeries. 3 all in the same knee. I can't imagine doing 3 all in the same knee. In 23 months, he tore his right ACL 3 times, used 3 different surgery methods. This is 18 months minimum of rehab that this gentleman had to go through. Another teammate of his, John Beeson at the time, shout out to the Panthers linebacker core, Kuechly, Beeson, Davis. They had a squad. Shaq Thompson now, they know what they're doing. I see you, coaches. He thought maybe that he would never return to sports. He even mentioned to Beeson that he doesn't think any team would ever want him again. He thought maybe he'll just be a recreational basketball player from time to time. He would have to retire. He snapped out of that and returned to the rehab process, which I'm sure reigned on his mind. And every day he had the mental toughness to say, I'm going to keep going because this is what I want to do. Davis went on to make the Pro Bowl in 2015 through 17, 4 years after his 3rd ACL surgery, and even had an all-pro season. It is possible, y'all. You can recover from the injury and you can be better than you were before. If you are willing to put the work in, the surgery goes well, and there are no other complications, do not believe anybody when they tell you you cannot be better than you were before. This is a man that also had to go through heart surgery. He's fractured ribs, fractured his forearm, hamstring sprains, the 3 ACL tears, another hamstring sprain, a MCL sprain, a labrum tear, and a chest bruise. That was in backwards order, but y'all get the idea. This man has been through a load of injuries and did not let a single one of them stop him. Now, we all aren't as physically gifted as an NFL linebacker, but we can all put in the effort to get back to where we were. Do not compare yourself to anybody else. I said be better than what you were, and that's what your goal should be. Every time. If you get injured, you should come back better than what you were. Don't worry about how long it takes. Just find a way to get it done. Another example, the cornerback Terrell Thomas tore his ACL 3 times and was able to recover from it and play in the NFL. He didn't quite have the accolades that Thomas Davis had, but he still had a lucrative career and was a starter in the NFL for years. And finally, the man everybody thinks about when you say ACL tears, Mr. Derrick Rose himself. Derrick Rose has overcome all types of adversity, from becoming the league's youngest MVP all the way to becoming a man whose career was derailed by injuries and people said would have been one of the greatest to ever do it had he not been injured. I'm sure that weighed on his mind every day as he went through the rehab process. People are telling me I'll never be as good as I ever was. That has a mental bearing on you every single day. You're thinking, how could I get back there? There's no way I could have lost it in just this time. I gotta be better than I was before. And these 2 athletes are examples of people that have done it. Derrick Rose returned to the NBA, dropped a 50-piece on Halloween night. Probably one of the most spectacular performances of the last decade. If that moment didn't want to bring tears to your eyes, you have no heart. I'm just kidding. But it was a great moment for basketball when Derrick Rose returned. And now we see he is averaging more than 20 points a season and is showing he is still, I wouldn't say as explosive as he was that MVP season, but he's very close. He is very close. Age is a factor as well. Just as you get older, you lose a little quickness. I would say he would be at the level he was had he been rehabbed to this extent after the second injury, but since age is a factor in this as well and it took him more time, he's just slightly less explosive than he was after that MVP year, but still an unguardable basketball player. Now you're thinking those are professional athletes. You keep bringing up Adrian Peterson's, Derrick Rose, Thomas Davis, just some other examples, Porzingis, Kyle Lowry, Zach LaVine, Jerry Rice, who came back in 3 months, by the way, Tom Brady, Gronk, JJ Watt. Let's talk about somebody who's not a professional athlete. I have gone through 3 ACL surgeries myself. For proof, I tore my left ACL, September 20th, 2013. Then I tore my right ACL in November of 2014. Followed by tearing my left ACL again. It was a hamstring graft, for those of you wondering, and I got a patellar tendon graft after that. This one's a hamstring graft as well. So I tore my left ACL again in November of 2016, I believe. So you can imagine, after surgery, I had to stay at home, get schooled from there, didn't see my friends, didn't get to see what the team was doing. I did play for a good high school. They had a lot of success, but I had to just watch the box score. I couldn't go to the games. I used to just wait on the news to see the highlights every Friday night. That can be mentally frustrating. Imagine not being able to help your team or seeing them in a situation where you really could have helped them and wishing you were out there. Similarly to the way that Thomas Davis tore his ACL 3 times in 23 months, I tore my ACL 3 times in a period of 3 years. About 13 months after the first surgery, I tore it again. And then 2 years after that, I tore it again. My teammates weren't with me going through rehab for 6 months, my junior year. It was tough returning to conditioning and workouts, thinking about, is my knee gonna give out at any moment? It was tough sitting through the jokes. People saying, oh, if I tore my ACL twice, I'd just never play again. Football just ain't for me. I wasn't trying to hear that. That's not what you need to hear. That's not the mindset you need to have. Something is for you if it's your passion. Like I said earlier in the video, Anything could have caused these tears. You cannot drag yourself down blaming the things you have done for your injuries. Anything can cause an injury. It could have just been the field conditions. It could have been the angle you were hit at. It could have been a strength deficit. It could have been anything. So do not drag yourself in the mud for getting injured. It has already happened. It was not your fault. Get better. Now, for those of you wondering what it actually feels like to tear your ACL, I know some of you weirdos will click on this video even though you haven't torn one. Or in prevention. I'm not gonna call you a weirdo. Maybe you're clicking on this video in prevention. I'm not here to give you preventative advice. I am not a doctor. I do have a bachelor's in exercise science, and I am working on a graduate certificate in sport nutrition and dietary supplementation, but that does not at all make me qualified to speak or be an expert on knee injuries despite having 3 of them. That was a mouthful. Disclaimer. The 3 times that I tore it, all 3 felt entirely different. Helmet hitting my knee, painful. It felt like a grenade had blew up, but it was only a small grenade and it just blew up in my knee. I wanted to lay down on the field, but I didn't. My teammate helped me up. I jogged or hobbled off the field, which was stupid. I may have caused more damage, definitely to my meniscus, because I had no structure. Who knows? I could have caused way more damage trying to do that. But after the swelling goes down, interestingly enough, your knee feels pretty normal. You just know that once you reach a certain range of motion or do activities that involve cutting or jumping, you know your ACL is not there. You'll feel it. Bone to bone contact. You cannot describe that feeling. If you don't have an ACL, you know exactly what that feels like. Or if you had a surgery or something, you know what that feels like. Or you just got very poor cartilage. Like you might have had a meniscus injury and know what it feels like. But bone on bone contact in your knee, it does not feel good. Second injury, non-contact. I was making a cut in the backfield. I just got the handoff. I cut, just collapsed. It looked like I got sniped. When I got sniped, I just fell straight to the ground. Now, I felt the pop this time. Last time I didn't feel the pop, probably because there was pads all around me. I felt the pop. There was nobody around me, but I knew what was up. If you've ever had it happen to you once, you won't mistake the feeling. It did not hurt nearly as bad as that first time, but it did not feel good either. The third time, I jumped, landed on one leg. The leg was too straight. Left ACL tore again. That one hurt pretty bad, but I would put it in between the other 2. It's probably because of that one already had a surgery. It was a hamstring graft, so that probably had some impact on the way it felt. I am a normal person. I played high school football, but I was by no means the greatest athlete on the field. Just for reference, I ran at best a 4.5 40. It was a high 4.5. Don't ask me what it was, because I'm not going to tell you. At best, I benched 225 my senior year. That was after my first surgery. I think I got to 205-ish or something like that before any surgeries. I probably could have squatted close to 300 pounds my junior year, but I never really went that heavy. Football, we never went that heavy on squats. We would always 80% at max. I didn't have a super impressive power clean. I was 147 pounds my senior year, 142 or something like that junior year. Nothing impressive. I played running back. I wasn't necessarily the biggest guy. I wasn't the fastest guy. I wasn't the strongest guy, but I was never the worst at anything. What I need to say about myself is, after never squatting 300 pounds in my entire life, I was able to do it after 3 knee surgeries. And on video, I have squatted 465 for a max. Now that took years of training. I am now 3 years removed from all surgery. That's a pretty significant amount of time. I am not a power lifter. I am more a bodybuilder than anything. I guess power builder would be the most accurate term, because I like to lift weights, get stronger, but at the same time, I am working out for my physique. At the end of the day, your well-being is what's most important. And I'm working out to be as healthy as possible. I want to get as much muscle mass and bone density before I'm elderly, so I have more to let wither away. While you guys are all hunched over and walking around like the hunchback in Notre Dame and stuff, I'm gonna be standing upright and walking around pleasantly, happily, taking walks, going on runs, playing football still. I doubt it, but who knows what physical therapy is like. Physical therapy is going to be tough. There's going to be days where you have to get range of motion, and it's going to hurt when you have to bend and straighten your knee. It's going to be times where your muscles hurt because they're so sore, because your leg is atrophied after surgery. Atrophy meaning the muscle was lost because you don't use it, because you can't, because they numbed your leg. That was a package. Okay. They numbed your leg and then told you to rest. One more thing I forgot to mention. I have returned to sports. In case y'all were wondering, I play flag football all the time. I cut, I run, I jump, I skip, I dive, I duck, I dodge. Anything that I was doing before, I can do better now. If you really put your mind to it, you work hard, you recover properly, you do what the doctor says, you follow the guidelines by your physical therapist, you will be able to return and be better than you ever were before. And I don't want to discourage you guys. I want to encourage you guys to make that happen. Let's get it done. Let's show people that ACLs are not a career-ending injury. They're just an injury that takes a long time to recover from. Please like, comment, and subscribe. If you would like to see more stories of my ACL injuries, please comment below. If you want to see a video similar to this about injuries, it's supposed to be motivational. I want to encourage you guys to not quit or give up on your goals. Let me know that as well, or just video ideas in general. Please let me get like 50 likes on this. I don't really get a lot of likes, I don't get a lot of views, but I want to help people out. Help me reach more people, please. And also one more thing, pay me.